try and remove the strangeness that has settled around it. And second, I'll talk about, should it be awakened? What does it mean to awaken it? Does it mean it's sleeping? I mean, otherwise, why would you awaken it? It has to mean that it's sleeping. Is it really sleeping? And what does that mean? What does this thing that's sleeping that you want to awaken mean? And how is it related to the chakras? How is it related to the astral spine and Sushumna and Ida and Pingala and all of the things you may have heard about? And what does it have to do with yoga techniques? Does it have anything to do with yoga techniques? And is it safe to work with it? So these are the four things that I'll try and address as I go along. So let me share my screen. I have a few PowerPoint slides that will help give you a visual about what I'm saying. Give me a moment as I share my screen. Here we go. Okay, I hope everybody can see my screen. So let's start with the meaning of the word. I mean, Kundalini is a Sanskrit word, as many of you know. What does it really mean? The word Kundala, which is a masculine noun in general in Sanskrit, if something ends with an A, it's not always true, but if something ends with an A, generally it's masculine. If something ends with a I, generally it's feminine. Although that's not always true. For example, my name, which is a Sanskrit name, Murali, ends with an I, and it is obviously not feminine, but this is in general true. So Kundala means literally a coil or a circle. And in many Indian languages, it's a term used to indicate earrings. So you'll see how a symbolic concept is used to represent something that is concrete. And Kundali, when you turn the masculine into the feminine, Kundali means of a serpent, of a Shakti, meaning that which is symbolized by or comes from a serpent, or by Shakti. Shakti means vitality. And Kundalini, the suffix ni, when you put ni at the end of it, it means she who is of a coiled serpent or coiled Shakti. So does that make sense, everyone? So Kundalini literally means something that's wound and is either symbolized by or is represented by or resembles a serpent. Now, this is a highly symbolic description, obviously. Otherwise, what sense would it make to have a coiled serpent hanging around within us? Surely, with all the x-rays that have been taken and all the surgeries that have been done, somebody would have found a serpent in there. It's not like you can miss it. So this is obviously a symbolic description. So let me go back to the ancient yogic texts and just kind of literally translate for you what this actually means, well, what they say about Kundalini. So we have texts that describe Kundalini that come to us in the last 1,600 years. There is probably, to my knowledge, there is about 50 of them. I myself, as part of my studies, both as PhD and later as a researcher, have maybe studied about 10 of them quite deeply. And one of the most famous of these texts come to us from about 400, almost 500 years ago, 17th century. And this is what it says. Let me read for you. This is verbatim from chapter 3. It says that man's soul force is present in Muladhara. Muladhara means base of the spine. Let me just say base of the spine. Man's soul force is present in the base of the spine as the goddess Kundalini. She lies asleep like a serpent coiled 3½ times. Just think about that for a moment. As long as she is asleep, the soul is bound by animal instincts. But when Kundalini suddenly awakens, the doorway to self-realization are opened as though by a key. That's what it says. Okay, just keep that in mind. Now let's go back about 300 years before that, actually almost 1,000 years before that. This is another text called Shiva Samhita, a very famous text. And look at how it describes it. It says, in the lotus at the base of the spine is the supreme goddess in the form of coiled lightning. Coiled lightning. Coiled 3.5 times, she's subtle and resembles a snake. So just kind of let that symbolism come into your consciousness. She's like a sleeping serpent and sparkles with her own light. Made of links like a snake, she is the goddess of speech and is symbolized by a seed sound. Okay, just these are verbatim translations of these ancient texts. So what are they really trying to say? Now, let me tell you another yogi that wrote about this 100 years ago, and he actually wrote it in plain English. And this is Paramahansa Yogananda. He wrote this in plain English about 100 years ago. He says that unseen forces that govern the body have often been spoken of as very subtle, hidden, and hard to control. The Hindu savants, meaning scholars, specially name the outgoing force of life energy at the base of the spine in the coccyx as the serpent force or Kundalini. Every time, now this next part is important. Every time you think good thoughts, the Kundalini, meaning this hidden, this great serpent, this force, begins to move upward. Every time you hate people or hold harsh thoughts about them, the Kundalini automatically moves downward. When you love others selflessly or think kind thoughts, it moves up the spine. Okay, so these are kind of the descriptions. Now I'm sure you must be a little confused at this point. So let me try and summarize them. So this is how Kundalini is symbolically described. First and foremost, it is a force, meaning it is something that motivates us to do something. So keep that in mind. Sleeping or awake doesn't matter. It is a force and it is actively motivating us to do something. And it is unseen because it's like the air around us. Air is the most important thing around us, but we are not aware of it. We are aware of the table, the chair, the screen in front of us, but not the air. A Kundalini is like that. So it's an unseen force. And its characteristic, what's the characteristic of the force? That it has a quality of light to it. Lightning, meaning there is a suddenness. There is a striking quality to it, okay? And it's present at the base of the spine. I'll tell you much more about this. In fact, we'll practice that very soon. And it represents our own soul force, meaning what vitality we think that we have, each of us. Whether it's Marsha or Sonia or Harsh or Christopher, whomever, who we think we are and express ourselves with force, it is that. And it is like a serpent coiled 3.5 times. And when we affirm our separateness from others, me, my tribe, my things, I am better, then we feed this serpent. And with selfless actions, we awaken the serpent. Okay, this is how the yogis describe Kundalini. Now, this is okay, but if you're like me, you would read this and say, still doesn't make sense. So let's drill down a little bit further. Now it's going to get a little deeper. So pay close attention. This is a little bit of a class in anatomy, except this is a class in inner anatomy, how we are built inwardly. So these are straight from the ancient yogic texts. And again, all of these, you'll find a lot of information and probably a lot of misinformation on Google. Now let's look at how modern science describes the universe we are in. It talks about three things that are present in the universe. What are those three things? There is matter or energy, matter and light, the things that you can touch and feel, and the light and the energy that you feel from the outside. And there are forces. What kind of forces? You have gravitation, you have electricity, you have magnetism, you have nuclear force, all of those. And then all of these matter and forces are in the backdrop of space and they move through time. These are the three fundamental things. And let me give you a little bit of physics just for those of you that think about the universe this way. The forces move matter, meaning if I have to pick up my mouse, I use the force of my bicep. Okay, this is a piece of matter and it moves by force. Now, Einstein said that matter distorts. If you've heard of space is curved, then matter distorts space, and space transmits the force. This is kind of how with these simple things, scientists have been able to explain the entire universe. Whether it's the computer that you are using or the GPS that you'll use to go to a restaurant, or whether it's a medicine that you take, they all come from this fundamental understanding. According to science, there is nothing more. There is only this, no more, okay? And, if you want to look at the physics, there is Newton and Einstein and Maxwell and this is how they all fit together. Now, what's missing in this picture? What's missing? Something really big is missing, isn't it? It's the mind. What we call as awareness, consciousness, introspection, intellect, these are all fundamentally missing. It's not an oversight. It's because science doesn't talk about this. Not because it doesn't want to, but simply because it cannot be measured. If you cannot put an instrument and measure it, then science has no room for it. It's called empiricism. That's what science is based on. And therefore, because you cannot measure the mind, the consciousness, the awareness, my ability to think and do logic, and my ability to feel, they cannot be measured. So it doesn't fit this basic picture of forces, matter, and energy. Yoga, on the other hand, is about experience. It's not about measurement. So yoga specifically talks about the mind. So let's see what yogis say about this. I'm coming to Kundalini. I'm connecting the dots. So don't worry, I have not lost sight of Kundalini. All of this is eventually connected to it. So what's the universe according to yoga or Vedanta? Vedanta are these ancient texts from which all of yoga is derived, in fact. Again, there is matter, meaning there is things that you can touch and feel. If you touch your hand, if you run your tongue over your lips, then that is matter because you can touch it, you can sense it. Sensation. Then there is mentation, the mind. Okay? What is the third one? This is where things get interesting. This is our first clue into Kundalini. Yogis say the third one is prana, vital energy. Now, how are they related? Imagine you have a piece of chocolate in front of you, okay? And you want to eat that chocolate. How does that begin? You first look at that piece of chocolate and your mind has a desire to eat it, doesn't it? So the mind says, I need to eat that chocolate. And then that moves your inner vitality, your inner energy. And that inner energy moves your hand and the hand grabs the piece of chocolate. It puts it into the mouth. And once it comes into the mouth, you have that moment of enjoyment, that first feeling, that sense of fat and sugar that chocolate brings to you. You have that extreme enjoyment. So the energy moves the mind to feel happy. Okay? Do you see that? So yoga says that mind and matter communicate with each other through energy, and it's bi-directional. In other words, You can do something with your body to make your mind happy. You can do something with your mind to make your body happy. You can do something with your mind to make your body unhappy. You can do something with your body to make your mind unhappy, and so on. Okay, this is the yogic view. Okay, everybody with me? So the important thing here is this is this guy, prana. This is translated as energy in the Chinese worldview, the traditional Chinese worldview. It's called as qi. Koreans call it Koreans, I think, call it ki, and but it's all the same thing. It is this inner vitality. Now, here is the thing, though. It's not like electricity or something. Electric energy, when you turn on the electric switch and the bulb lights up, the electricity has no intelligence. It's just flowing. There's nothing, it doesn't know what it's doing. Prana, on the other hand, is both intelligent and conscious. In other words, prana, your inner energy, has characteristics of the mind. It is conscious, it's intelligent, things we associate with the mind. But it can also move the body, meaning it is a little bit like the body. So it's a bridge between, it has characteristics of both. You see what I'm saying? So this is very important to keep in mind. Now, Jayasudha asked a question: what creates activities of the mind? The thought to eat chocolate. I'll come to that, but the simple answer to that is karma. But I'll come to that soon. That's in fact, Kundalini comes from there. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about prana. Now, I want to say that this thing, mind, matter, and prana, is both cosmic and it's personal, individual. Now, in the cosmic, this universal awareness, universal consciousness, you can call it as God, you can call it as spirit, you can call it as universe, but that exists at the cosmic level. Matter at the cosmic level is simply the entire universe that we see: the earth, the sun, the moon, the stars, the billions of galaxies, everything. What is prana at the universal level? Well, it's the Holy Spirit in the Christian tradition, the great comforter, divine mother, the sound of Om. They are all given names, given the cosmic mind in the Korean and Chinese traditions. It's called as the cosmic mind. That is all prana, names given to prana at the universal level, at the cosmic level. Now, individually, what does this mean? For us, in each individual, the matter is, it is my body, it's your body. The mind is, the consciousness is what we call as the soul, what we call as the mind, the intellect, the heart. That is what it is at an individual level. And prana is simply the energy, the vital force that's present within us. So these three things are both universal and individual. Okay. That is part one. Now, part two is, let's drill a little bit deeper into prana. Now, prana literally means, pra means to fill, and an means to breathe. This is in fact the same root word as animus in Latin, from where the word animal comes from. Animated, animal, it means to breathe. So prana literally means to breathe in order to fill. So meaning the breath brings vitality to fill the entire body, or the universal vitality, the universe breathes in order to keep creation going. That's kind of the meaning here. The movement of prana is responsible for all bodily functions, all thoughts, emotions, desires, and so on, and it manifests as breath. This is very important. This is your first clue into Kundalini. the prana manifests as breath. And as I said, prana is intelligent, it's conscious, and it connects the mind, the intent, with the body, action. Intention and action are connected by the medium of prana. Now, this is energy. So just like electricity needs wires, prana needs wires. And they are called nadis. They are meridians. They are the yogic equivalent of meridians. And yogis say that there are thousands of them. In fact, yogis say that there are 72,000 meridians in the body. I'm not making this up. This is what the texts say. Nobody says what they are, but they say there are 72,000. But all of them say that among those, 3 are the most important. One is if you sit up straight and just kind of mentally follow your spine, just tune into your spine. It starts at the base of the skull and then comes down through the torso, goes down into the groin, and ends just at the very end of the tailbone. So everybody just visualize it. Close your eyes and visualize it. This is the central channel. It's not the actual vertebra because prana doesn't move in the physical space, but that's where it's felt in the physical body. You can open your eyes. It says that the left side is one of the important meridians. The right side of the spine, called Pingala, is another one. And Sushumna, the center of the spine. These are the 3 most important channels for the prana. Ida means moon, Pingala means sun or fire, and Sushumna, it means it, not very important what it means. Just think of it as the central channel. And together, these 3 channels are known as the astral spine. Okay. Now, in the yogic view, when prana is blocked, we have disease. When prana is flowing, we have health. It's kind of as simple as that. I know some of you came to my morning yoga class, and that's the purpose of yoga is to make your prana flow. And hopefully you felt better at the end of it. That's all. In fact, the yoga hospital that is affiliated with the university where I teach, this is what we use for healing purposes. And it heals all kinds of, especially inflammatory diseases. It heals it very, very well. So yogic practices, the indirect benefit is to awaken and balance the flow of prana. Okay. And I won't go into the rest of it, but just know that that's how they all fit together. Now, this is what I was leading to with all of this. The breath is intimately connected with the flow of prana. This is the single most important insight of yoga. If you understand this truly, then every single yogic practice will begin to make sense. So pay close attention. When the energy, prana, moves up the left side of the spine, we inhale. When the energy moves down the right side of the spine, we exhale. In other words, if the energy stops moving up the left side of the spine and right side, we stop breathing. Okay? When a baby is born, it comes out of the womb and then it exhales. And the first inhalation, when the baby is born, it takes an inhalation. The first inhalation it takes, the energy moves up the left side of the spine. Then it cries out. Crying out is an exhalation. Okay? So at the time of death, the opposite happens. The person that's about to die exhales and wants to take another inhalation, but the energy doesn't move up the left side of the spine. So death is always like that. They exhale and then they try to inhale. There is no inhalation, and the soul leaves the body. Okay, everybody with me? This is we're this is metaphysics. You cannot understand Kundalini without any of this. Okay, let me see. Let me see in the chat room if there are any. Yeah, so James Vajra has asked, so the flow of energy causes the breath and not the other way around. You're exactly right, Vajra, that the flow of energy is more primeval, and that causes the breath. And it's a very important thing. I'll come to that in a minute. Now, let me. Now, so I talked about prana, right? I talked about mind, matter, and connected by prana, and that the prana flows within the spine. And when the inhalation and exhalation are caused by the flow of prana. So these three we got. Now, when the prana flows within the spine, it actually flows through 7 distribution points within the spine. These are called as chakras. We often pronounce it as chakras, and that's okay. But in case you want to fine-tune your pronunciation, it's chakras. Chakras. But, don't obsess over it. Since we are on the topic, I just mentioned it. Chakra means a wheel. These are spinning vortices of energy. So your prana crisscrosses the chakras. And there is 7 of them. 5 of those are associated with bodily functions. The 6th one is entirely mental. There is no bodily function associated with it. And the 7th one is not even mentation. It lies beyond all of those. And I won't go into details about the chakras. That will take another 3-4 hour class. But the purpose of the chakras, this is what I want to get to, is they are like electrical substations. When I assume many of you are in the Seattle area, by no means all of you, that we have a waterfall here called Snoqualmie Falls, and electricity is generated there, but that's very high voltage. It has a lot of potential. It's stepped down by a transformer, which is near my house, and then distributed to my house. That's exactly what a chakra does. When the energy comes from the brain, it takes it and distributes it. When the heart chakra distributes the energy to my hand. And it also causes feelings of love within me. The navel chakra is responsible for digestion, for my core strength, for my self-control, but also for my need to control others. So all the chakras have a physical and a mental dimension to them. Okay, so let's locate them. Everybody sit up straight. We'll locate each of the chakras one by one. The first is the root that's present at the base of the spine. This is important for Kundalini. So if you squeeze your anus, just squeeze your anus 3 or 4 times. That is roughly the root. Okay, that's stability, loyalty, or negatively directed bigotry, having a strong opinion. They all come from the root. The next is behind your genitals. Imagine if you really want to go to the bathroom and you're holding it. So try and imagine you want to pee and you're holding it. You see what happens? That muscle that you use, that's your 2nd chakra. That's creativity, adaptability, sexual desire, reproduction. They all come from there. The 3rd chakra is behind the navel. This is one of the more important ones. If you just draw the navel in and up, that's your 3rd chakra. And that is responsible for self-control and discipline. They all come from there. And the heart chakra, of course, you all know, if you just squeeze the shoulder blades together, where you feel that sensation, that's your heart. This is responsible for love, compassion, and entitlement. Love can be both bad and good. That's all the heart. It's also responsible for breathing, the function of the lungs, and just our ability to express ourselves. In the throat, if you just move your throat from side to side, the center point of that movement is your throat. It's responsible for speech and communication and so on. Then the 6th chakra is right here at the spiritual eye. but also here at the base of the skull, this diffuse point, and the seventh is at the very top. Okay, so those are the chakras. I'm almost done. I promise I'll come to Kundalini in less than 5 minutes. But I need to tell you a story, because without that you can't get Kundalini. So there is it's a very well-known story in India. It said that in the beginning, before there was the universe, before space existed, before there was space, before there was time, there was only an infinite ocean of milk, an infinite perfect ocean of milk. And one day, in that ocean of milk, spontaneously appeared a fig leaf, and floating on that fig leaf was a beautiful baby. And the baby was sucking its own toe. You know how babies very cutely, they pick their leg and suck their own toe? That's what this baby was doing. And from this primeval baby, from the navel, belly button of that primeval baby, suddenly came a lotus, a very resplendent lotus. And on that lotus sat an impossibly ancient being, the creator Brahma. And impelled by a thought that he should create, he created 4 human beings. The consciousness of God split into 4, and 4 human beings appeared. But then they sat in meditation and immediately merged themselves back into the bliss of God, because they couldn't tolerate being separate. So they just merged back. So Brahma, the creator, realized that I need something to make the creation stick. So the next time he created souls, he created in them a veil that hid this universal oneness, this God, from its sight. Then these souls identified themselves with the body instead of with the universal spirit, and then became individualized. They became separate. And the moment they became separate, what happened? They began to like something, they began to dislike something, they began to get attached to something, and so on. And from the likes and dislikes, they began to have feelings, and very soon they forgot their infinite nature. And here we are, many billions of years after creation, still struggling with our individuality, while we find the oneness and bliss hidden behind the veil of ignorance. This is the creation story. It's a kind of a fun story, isn't it? Now, what's that got to do with Kundalini? Now we come to what Kundalini is. The force that makes us individualized, the force that makes me Murali, the force that says, I look at something and I want it. I look at something, I hate it. I look at something and say, I am better. And I say, I want to make more money. And all of that, the sense of I, it is an actual force. If you think about it, the biggest motivation that we all have is to foster, is to enrich, is to emphasize that sense of I. That force that causes us to be separate, that is referred to as Kundalini. Now, this sense of separateness coexists with a sense of oneness, that there is within us a constant fight between wanting to be bigger than who we are. We all want to be unselfish. Which of us don't want to be unselfish? We all want to take care of others. But the opposing force within us, equally stronger, says, I need to take care of myself. It says, it's not that it's wrong to take care of oneself, but when it individualizes, it says, I am better. It says, my tribe is better. Those kinds of feelings. So there are these two poles, polar opposites, and they're always at war with one another. Now, the one that forces us to think about ourselves rather than about others the one that forces us to say that I am separate rather than one with others. That is the force of Kundalini. And it's an enormous force. It's an immense reservoir of energy stored at the base of the spine. And Swami Kriyananda, who founded Ananda, is a disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda. He said that it's the entrenched vitality of mortal delusion. Just chew on it for a moment. That the delusion, that the false knowledge that we are mortal, that somehow we are identified with the body and therefore are subject to disease and death and sorrow and so on. Mortal delusion, that itself requires an impelling force. And that is Kundalini. It's so let's go back to the ancient text and see what it said in light of everything that I've explained to you so far. Okay, it's time to connect the dots. Our soul force is present at the base of the spine as the goddess Kundalini. Does that make sense now? Literally who we are, it's called Atma Shakti. Atma means soul and Shakti means force. Who we are is entrenched at the base of the spine, our potential, but it is asleep. That's why don't we all have the feeling that we are only being a very small part of our potential, that there is so much more that we can be. That's where that intuition comes from, because Kundalini is asleep. Kundalini is not awake. Okay? And it is in the form of coiled lightning. Now you get the sense of why it's lightning, because it is a force that can be awakened. Just like lightning, it can strike in the opposite direction. It can motivate us to do better things instead of being self-involved. And as long as she is asleep, the soul is bound by animal instincts that we want to satisfy the sensory pleasures. We want to have a more comfortable bed. We want to have a better lunch, to have a better home, and all of those things. We are drawn by suffering and sense tendencies as long as she is asleep. But when she suddenly awakens, the doors of self-realization open. See, now does this whole thing make sense? What this is and what it is symbolic of? So you cannot really get into the depth of Kundalini unless you really get into who we are and how we are made. So let me pause there. Crystal has a question about a certain pranayama, and Crystal, I'll get to that. Remind me of this question at the end of the talk, because we will practice that pranayama soon. And Dambara says, why 3.5? Dambara, I have no clue. Swami Kriyananda just says that it must be symbolic of something, but nobody explained it. But everybody says 3.5. So don't know. Okay, so that is what Kundalini is. Let me review. Let me review what I have said so far. That prana, the vitality, connects the body and the mind. We have a lot of energy within us, and that's how we are able to live life. But most of our energy is trapped in the sense of separateness, in the sense of I-ness, in the sense of individuality, in the sense of delusion. That thing that we have, that takes up most of our energy to be that way. And that is Kundalini. And it lies at the base of the spine. And awakening of Kundalini is both the result of and results in deep spiritual transformation. So no matter what you do to awaken Kundalini, if you are like Mother Teresa serving the lepers of Calcutta, heedless of your own comfort, that is awakening Kundalini, because it is no longer affirming individuality. If you are like a great philosopher, a seeker of wisdom, constantly looking for the truth, that too awakens Kundalini. If you are a devotee singing praises of God at all times, that too awakens Kundalini, because in all three cases, you are parting the veil of ignorance. You are de-emphasizing individuality, and the serpent begins to awaken, to become awake. But when we do the opposite, when we emphasize the sense of separateness, we say that I am better, I need this for myself, I don't feel like serving somebody else today, all of those things. Or when we indulge in sense pleasures, let me eat a little bit more. Even though I'm very full, let me eat a little bit more. Let me indulge in sexual activity more than is necessary. Let me always kind of overindulge in all sense pleasures. Then Kundalini coils herself a little more deeply and darkens our mind more and more. So that's what Kundalini is. Now let me go back to the 4 questions that I said. What is Kundalini and why should it be awakened? Now you have a sense of it, because all spiritual progress either results in or is a result of an awakened Kundalini. How is it related to the chakras and Sushumna? Well, it's present at the base of the first chakra, and when it awakens, it flows through the Sushumna, the deep spine, not the left or the right, but the central channel. Third question, how do yoga techniques and meditation awaken Kundalini? Let me come to that now. In the meantime, Vajra has a question. He says, when I'm meditating, I can feel the energy move when I breathe. So how is energy causing the breath? And so because when you breathe, you feel the energy, it doesn't mean you feel the energy that caused the breath. What happens when we breathe is we end up feeling the spine. And energy is always moving in the spine, even outside of the up and down movements, because that's what our vritti samskars are. So the energy that we feel as a result of pranayama is energy that's already present in the spine. It's simply a result of the spine becoming more magnetic. And David asks, can you speak more about energization exercises and how it relates to movement of prana? David, I'm coming to that right now. So how do yoga techniques and meditation awaken Kundalini? Now, let's take a step back. We are all sitting on a gigantic source of energy, quite literally, right? Isn't that right? And it needs to be awakened. It needs to move upwards. So how do you do that? How do you make anything move? How do you make a wheelbarrow move? You either push it or you pull it, isn't it? Those are the only 2 ways of making it move. Similarly, there are 2 and only 2 ways of working with Kundalini. You either nudge it from the bottom, kind of say, okay, wake up, or you establish an attraction, a magnet higher up, and then the Kundalini naturally gets pulled towards it. Those are the only 2 ways. And when you nudge it from the bottom, it's called Hatha Yoga. These are the yogic practices. If you stand up and do the triangle pose, you're working with the base of the spine. If you do the bow pose, you're working with the heart and you're working with the legs, so the Kundalini is being nudged up a little bit. If you do the cobra pose, then you're working with Kundalini. So they all work the same way. Same with pranayama. When you do alternate nostril breathing, Nadi, Shodhana, Pranayama, and when you hold the breath, you're nudging the Kundalini awake. You're saying the breath has stopped moving, and therefore you can awaken now. Remember the connection between the breath and the spine. You're nudging it awake. So they're all Hatha yogic techniques. The second way you can do it is by Raja Yoga, meaning you work directly with the energy in the spine and you magnetize the top of the spine. And like an iron filing, the Kundalini slowly begins to rise. So this is how devotion works. For example, you magnetize your heart. You're very devoted. You surrender to a higher principle. You are always aware that whatever you do, there is an unseen force guiding you. And your heart is very open. Then Kundalini begins to awaken because it begins to get attracted to the higher centers. Okay. So these are the two ways that you can work with it. So every single technique of yoga works the same way. It either pushes it from the bottom or pulls it to the top. Now, many people here have practiced energization exercises. And if you don't know what that is, and I think many of you haven't either, it is a set of tension and relaxation exercises where you willingly, for example, tense your arms and relax it and do that a bunch of times. And there is many other things that you can do with it. Now, this too, it doesn't directly awaken Kundalini, but what it does is it clears the body so that when you do the higher practices of Kriya Yoga, your Kundalini can be awakened even better. So this is in answer to David's question. That's how energization exercises fit into it. It doesn't directly awaken it, but it awakens our willpower, for example, which is a sixth chakra quality. Then later on, when you meditate, you can begin to awaken Kundalini. You can, when you tense your arms and relax them, it awakens the heart. And then again, you can awaken it. It balances the pranas so that when you sit in meditation, you can concentrate more. So it's an indirect way of awakening it. Mahamudra, for example, those of you that are familiar with it, is a much more direct way. It really literally nudges Kundalini from bottom up. So this is how next time when you do yoga, if you go to a yoga class and your yoga teacher teaches you a standing pose, a triangle pose, a warrior pose, a half moon pose, chair pose, and so on, you're working with the base of the spine. You're working. So if you pause after you do the pose and just come back into your spine for a moment, then you can feel that energy. When you do a core pose like side plank or the plank pose or the crane pose, any of those that require core, then you're working with the third chakra. If you do a forward bend, if you stretch your hamstrings, you're working with the second chakra. So any yoga pose that you do eventually works with the spine and therefore works with Kundalini. So is this making sense for everybody? I know I'm tossing a lot of things at you, but it is still fairly straightforward. It's not super complicated. But remember, I told you that Kundalini, the energy in the spine, is related to the breath. So is it possible that we can work with the breath and use that to awaken Kundalini? What do you think the answer is? The answer is absolutely. In fact, it's one of the most powerful ways of working with the base of the spine and awakening this energy. Okay, how else can you work with it? Well, you can work through chanting. Chanting, that's why in all yogic traditions, chanting is such a big deal, because it opens the heart. It awakens the natural love for the heart. And the more the heart opens, the less we think about ourselves. You see, that's what's wonderful about the quality of the heart, is the less we think about ourselves. When you do shoulder stand, Sarvangasana, what is your neck doing? You're like this, aren't you? And your legs are lifted up. Can you visualize it? This awakens the throat. It's a very powerful pose for Kundalini awakening. Okay, and in fact, in Ananda Yoga, those of you that practice it, we teach 3 powerful poses. It's called simple inverted, and then we do shoulder stand, and then we do headstand. And when you do it in that sequence, it can you can really awaken the base of the spine. You'll feel more energized, you feel more revitalized, you're able to think more clearly. Those are all signs of Kundalini awakening. There is a sudden awakening which happens later on where you feel this energy in the spine, but it's not always like that. More often than not, Kundalini awakens little by little. The serpent doesn't sleep that much deeply. It doesn't coil itself that much tightly. It begins to uncoil. Eventually, it will awaken. That's a moment of spiritual experience and transformation. But even outside of that dramatic event, that's a moment of epiphany. But even outside of that dramatic event, it awakens little by little. Every good thought that we have, every time we do yoga, every time we do pranayama, those of you Kriya yogis, of course, every time you do Kriya yoga, every time you do Mahamudra, energization exercises, headstand, when you have a perception of the truth, for example, when we serve somebody else, every one of them will reduce the depth of the sleep of this coiled lightning that represents our soul force. Okay, is everybody with me on this? So in a sense, everything that I do, everything that we do, either increases the depth of sleep of the Kundalini or decrease or awakens it a little bit. There are only two possibilities. This is why I said right in the beginning, when somebody asked, why do I feel the desire to eat chocolate? That's karma. That's these habitual tendencies are the greatest contributor to the depth of Kundalini's sleep. So that's why we need to work against habit. There is something in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, he says in second chapter, he says, Matra sparshastu kaunteya si shitoshna sukha dukkadaha agama paino nityastham sthitiksha bharata. It says, when the mind touches matter, matra sparsha, mind touches matter, shita, ushna, hot and cold, sukha, dukkha, pain and happiness are natural. Meaning when you are interacting, when you think you are separate and interact with the universe, heat and cold and suffering and sorrow and joy, those dualities are natural. And he says, agama paino nitya. Know that this is only because of your ignorance and they go away. They're not lasting. You will have pain, but you can choose not to suffer. Stham stitiksha swabharata. Therefore, learn forbearance. In other words, learning a little bit of imperviousness to suffering helps enormously in awakening Kundalini. Okay, so everybody with me? This is how the yogic lifestyle, the yogic techniques, the yogic diet, service, energization, pranayama, mahamudra, kriya yoga, they all eventually is related to the dormant soul force that need to be awakened. So everything we do in yoga is about Kundalini. So let me go back to the original question. Should Kundalini be awakened? Of course, we have no choice. That is the trajectory of the soul's evolution, is eventually the Kundalini will be awakened. Okay, so with that, let's see, we have a half hour left and I do want to do a little bit of practice. I want to teach you at least a couple of techniques that will give you a sense of what I'm talking about. So we've been sitting for an hour. Let's stand up, please. We won't do any big yoga poses. This is not the location for it, but just stand up, clasp your hands, inhale, lift your arms, and then just bend side to side like this, just a few times. Press your feet into the floor. And as you bend side to side, breathe in and breathe out. Okay, and then your hands in front of your heart, inhale, just bend backwards and forwards, just backwards and forwards a few times. Inhale as you go back, exhale as you come forward. Be careful if you have back issues, don't overdo this, and come back to center. Sit up, sit on your chair or cross-legged on the floor, doesn't really matter as long as the spine is straight. Let's take a double inhalation. It is like that, a short and a long breath, and tense the whole body. A double exhale and relax. Now, this is the key, okay? Imagine your life depended on it. Really, truly, sincerely tense your whole body, okay? Let's try that again. Double breath in. Tense, more, vibrate with tension. A little bit more. Relax. You see what a difference it made? Use your willpower. Once again, with a smile, double inhale, tense. Relax and feel your whole body. Make sure that you're sitting in such a way that your entire spine is straight. Sit on a chair, place a cushion on your chair, whatever you need to do to sit for the next 15 or 20 minutes with a very straight spine. Close your eyes. It's very important when you, I'm teaching you a combination of Hatha Yoga and Raja Yoga techniques. We'll both nudge the energy from below and attract it from above. Relax your legs. Relax your hips and torso. Spread your shoulders wide and relax your shoulders. Relax your neck and face. Gaze at the point between the eyebrows. Relax your eyes. And as you close your eyes, lift your gaze as if you're looking inward into your brain, right around the bottom part of the forehead. So your gaze is gently lifted. You see, that's the magnet. That's what Kundalini gets attracted to. The serpent that is sleeping begins to feel that something's pulling it up. Have that kind of feeling. And be still for a moment. Now let's work with the spine. Let's inhale for a count of 10. I'll tap gently so that you'll know what 10 count is. Let us begin. Inhale. That's 10. Hold your breath. Exhale, 10 count. Now inhale again for 10 count. I won't tap anymore. Feel like you are inhaling joy, vitality into the body. Hold your breath. This is prana. Remember, prana is breath that fills the body. Feel every skin cell filled with vitality. Exhale away any tension, any negativity. The more you do that, Kundalini begins to uncoil herself. One more time, inhale. Inhale deeply. Feel the tremendous vitality deep within the body. Hold your breath. Exhale. Relax for a little bit. Don't let your mind wander from the point between the eyebrows. Keep it there as much as you can Now we'll work with one of the chakras in the spine, the navel. The navel chakra is very important for any Kundalini work that we do. So we are going to do rapid exhalations. If you want to take a quick peek at what I'm doing, this is called Kapalabhati. It looks like this. It's a very rapid exhalation and we inhale automatically. If you have a heart condition or if you are prone to anxiety, just be very careful with this or just avoid doing it. Let's do a round of 10. Inhale, begin. Pause. Notice how your breath has stopped. Remember what I said? When the breath stops, it means the energy is neither on the left nor on the right. It's in the middle, it's in the deep spine. Let's do a round of 20. Inhale, begin. Pause. Breath is completely stopped. Gaze at the point between the eyebrows. Feel the energy rising up from the base of the spine, up through the heart, through the narrow channel of the throat, to the point between the eyebrows. Now we work with the left and right sides of the spine individually. This is called Nadi Shodhanam, meridian cleansing breath. This too is a powerful way of magnetizing the sleeping Kundalini. You need to open your eyes and look at me. You fold the first two fingers of the right hand into the palm like this so that the thumb and the last two fingers are lifted. And we turn the hand towards ourselves and we use the thumb to close the right nostril and the last two fingers to close the left nostril. Once again, if you have heart condition or you're pregnant, keep the breath flowing. Don't hold the breath when I instruct you to hold the breath. Press the right nostril closed. We'll inhale left for a count of about 8. If one of your nostrils is blocked, then inhale through both nostrils. Let us begin. Inhale left. Use your diaphragm, full breath. That's about 8 counts. Close both nostrils. Hold your breath. And when you hold the breath, focus at the point between the eyebrows. And then closing the left nostril, exhale right for a count of 8. Now we breathe in the opposite direction. Inhale right for a count of 8. Hold your breath. Gaze intently at the point between the eyebrows. This is Raja Yoga. Exhale left. One more round. Left for 8. Hold your breath. Gaze at the spiritual eye. Concentration is important. Exhale right. Inhale right. Hold your breath. Gaze the point between the eyebrows. Exhale left. Release both hands on your knees. Pause for about a minute. Feel your spine as if it is a tube of light. At the top of the spine is the point between the eyebrows. At the base of the spine is the coiled lightning of Kundalini waiting to be awakened. Let's move the body from side to side, but imagine this astral spine, this tube of light, unmoving. Let it resist the movement. And in doing so, feel your astral spine more sensitively. Gradually let the movement subside. Become still. This is the deep stillness within you. That is the result of pranayama. Now, tense and relax your anus, your first chakra. Just below that is Kundalini. Tense and relax it. Mentally chant Om, Om, Om as you tense and relax. And now relax your first chakra completely. Feel that energy rise up this hollow tube. Feel it rising up the spine, that sense of loyalty and determination. Like the fragrance of an incense stick, it is presenting itself to the spiritual eye. Let's move up to the second chakra, the place behind the genitals. Tense and release the muscles of your genitals as you mentally strike the chakra with the sound of Om. 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 You're doing that silent chant of Om. Relax your second chakra. Feel the quality of water element, creativity, adapt situation. Let this energy rise up the spine to the spiritual eye. The navel chakra, the third chakra, tense and relax, drawing the navel in and out, chanting Om, Om, Om. Gradually relax, feeling that fiery sense in the belly, warmth, discipline, self-control. Feel those qualities within yourself. Allow this energy to rise up to the light at the spiritual eye. Feel the love of the heart as you squeeze and release the shoulder blades, chanting Om, Om at the very center of the heart. And relax the heart. Feel the love, the compassion, not love of yourself, but love for all creation as your own. Love for God. Let that sense of love rise up the spine. Receive it at the point between the eyebrows. Tense and relax your throat as you silently chant Om. Letting it fully relax. Feel that energy rise up. The light at the spiritual eye is getting brighter and brighter. Now the base of the skull, where the spine and the skull meet, it's called the medulla oblongata. If you lift your chin, you'll feel that point compressing. So gently lift your chin and bring it back. And where you feel that compression, That is the center of ego. That's where the energy enters the body. Feel that energy as you chant Om. Relax and guide it to the point between the eyebrows. Feeling yourself greater than this body, as if your consciousness is traveling the entire universe. Knit your eyebrows, now the spiritual eye itself. Feel that light as you chant Om grow brighter and brighter. And as you relax your forehead, feel yourself as expanding infinitely out into the universe, leaving your body far behind. Feel your consciousness expand everywhere. Travel the far corners of the universe with your mind alone. Feel all creatures on this earth, not just through love, but feel them as your own. Feel as if they are part of you. Feel as if it is all contained in you. Aham Saha, the yogis say, Aham is I, Saha is that, the entire universe. Aham Saha. Affirm your oneness with the entire universe and let us be still for a few moments, or for a few minutes, unmoving, expanded. When Kundalini is fully awakened, the individual energy becomes the cosmic energy of Om. So let us end our little practice by chanting Om 3 times. Just sit still. There's no need to do any movement. Take an inhaling breath. Feel the sound coming from deep within you, from the base of the spine. Om. Feel your entire body vibrate to this cosmic sound. Again. Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Amen. Slowly open your eyes. So that was a short, it was a very short meditation or a practice. And everything that we did there directly worked with awakening the Kundalini. When we energize the body, we release the tensions, and that released tension release the energy, so we have more energy. And then when we did the rapid exhalations of Kapalabhati, remember that? What that did was created a magnet in the navel. So the energy that got released magnetized itself to the spine and then to the navel. That's what the deep breathing did. Remember, we inhaled and exhaled 3 times, magnetized the spine. And this practice, it's a very powerful practice. One of you had asked a question about that. Left to right moves along the spine. You remember, energy goes up the left side and comes down the right. Right to left moves against that. And that creates friction deep within. And the result of that friction is purification or cleansing. So when you do that practice, it's called meridian cleansing practice, then your spine is even more, there is more energy in the spine. You're ready to awaken the dormant Kundalini power. And then we work directly with the chakras. Each one we tense and relax, feel its qualities, and offer it all and say, it all comes from here. Meaning not from me, not from the base of the spine, which is me, but from here, which is you. So that's kind of the theory behind it. And then we sit still, and the more we allow the consciousness to expand, the more the serpent wakes up. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense, everybody? So I know that was a lot to take in such a short class. I do want to say this, that starting, I think January 20th, whatever that Thursday is, I, along with Christina and Sita, 2 other teachers here, will be teaching an entire course on this. And it's 13 weeks long, and I'll fill in all the blanks that I had to rush through today. So if you are interested, just go to anandawashington.org. I'm typing it in the chat box. And sign up for the Raja Yoga Intensive. So you can sign up for that course. I just wanted to say that. So let me now open it up for questions. Go ahead. I'll come to the chat questions a little bit later. I want to give an opportunity for those that want to ask questions now. Okay, don't everybody speak at once. Okay, Crystal, go ahead.
Well, I did type this in the chat, but since we're doing it out loud, I'll just ask. You were saying when you do the energization exercises, and I've heard this before, to vibrate your body, but I never have that experience, and I'm not sure if it matters, but that's what I'm wondering. Does it matter?
Well, you don't feel the vibrations from inside. That's not what we are referring to. It's just that, if you really tense your bicep, you keep tensing, then the tension itself causes it to kind of vibrate. It's that kind of feeling.
No, I could tense it like forever and it doesn't vibrate.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's perfectly fine.
Okay.
You're probably very relaxed, and that's a good thing. So
okay. Thank you.
Okay. What else?
Okay, really I have a question. Oh.
Okay, let's go with Julie first, and then David.
Hi, Murali. So you were talking about how some thoughts and practices raise the Kundalini, and then some thoughts and practices can not raise it or push it back down. And you use some examples like indulging in, an extra bowl of ice cream or something like that. Can you talk to me about the balance of like, because that feels like perfectionism and like judgment, and that feels really harsh. And I'm like, I don't know how to like be a human in this. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh, it's a very good question, Julie. And I'm really glad you asked it, because what I said certainly sounded that way. Remember, first and foremost, it is a part of moderation. So it's no, who among us can completely withdraw from the senses? We cannot. And we cannot do immoderate practices and say, from tomorrow, all I'll eat is kale and lettuce. Because that itself is an ego-based thing. Because it's ego whips itself up into saying, I'm so proud that I've given up ice cream. So it's a very subtle thing. First and foremost, emphasize moderation. When in doubt, be moderate. And then you'll be fine, because the objective is not to deny the senses. The objective is to not be attracted by it. And it's a big difference between the two. Over time, that attraction tapers off, but you cannot deny it, because if you did, then it only increases. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah. I just have had so many years of focusing on do it this way, do it this way, do it this way, that I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
need to not do that.
No, it's that certainly doesn't sound very moderate. So really, and that's where bhakti, devotion, comes in. We do what we can, and then say, well, God or Guru, you take it and make it into what it needs to be. This is all I got.
Okay.
So that's kind of how we fit that in.
Okay.
We shouldn't get exhausted by the practices. We should get exhilarated, but not exhausted. Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, Crystal, how much ice cream can we have? I don't know. I certainly want to have a lot. But it's tongue in cheek, but there is actually a very profound question there. What it's really talking about is awareness. You see, that's the key. Have you had the experience where you started eating a little bit of ice cream and pretty soon you've polished off the entire tub of it, and you don't have any recollection of how you ended up with an empty tub of ice cream? You see, that's a more downpulling practice. It's if we retain the awareness of what we are doing, then it's fine. And in fact, that's what Tantra means. Those of you that have heard of Tantra, and it's associated with, sting and sexual practices, but that's not what it is. It is the ability to retain awareness, even in the midst of our energy going out to the senses. So that's a good place to begin. I have practiced it often. You kind of, my Achilles heel, what will cause me to reincarnate again, is probably chocolate. And you after the first two pieces kind of say, I really should be stopping, but I truly feel like eating the next one. If that awareness persists, then we are more likely to do the right thing. Letting go of that awareness is feeding the Kundalini. Retaining the awareness is feeding the spiritual eye. That's a deeper way of looking at it. Yeah, and Annie said, control or deprivation feeds the ego, and moderation grounds the ego. Very well put. Somewhere, David, did you have a question?
Yes, it's actually Kyle here in this dark room with David.
Oh, hi, Kyle.
Hello. I was just curious real quick, is there anywhere where that infinite ocean of milk creation story is readable, written down?
Yeah, it's in the Puranas. I'll find a reference for you. It's in case you want to Google it. It's called Vishnu Purana. Let me type it here. No, it's a 2-volume book. So good luck finding it.
Sure.
But I'll try and find it, and I may not be able to do it by the time I see you tomorrow, but I'll do it sometime next week.
Sure. Thanks, Murali.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What is the difference between Raja Yoga and Kundalini Yoga? It's a very good question. I don't myself practice Kundalini Yoga. It's an actual school of yoga. So what I'm about to tell you is my second-hand knowledge. Kundalini Yoga itself combines both Hatha Yoga and Raja Yoga. So they do practices, strong practices that work with the base of the spine, but their eventual thing is more Raja Yogic. That's my understanding. So Hatha and Raja refer to, they are generic terms, and each type of yoga fits itself into either Hatha Yogic or Raja Yogic or a combination. Ananda Yoga, for example, is generally more Raja Yogic. We work more with the spine, and Vinyasa, for example, is generally more Hatha Yogic. So in that sense, Kundalini Yoga, from my understanding, is both. And Janet said, what course or practice would you recommend for stomach problems? Ooh, that's very hard to answer in the generic, because who knows what's causing the problem, and regardless, I'm not that kind of a doctor. But having said that, your standing poses, forward bends, and twists are generally good for maintaining the digestive fire. So that's probably the most generic answer I can give. And the Kapalabhati that we did, the breath of fire, the exhalations, that is also good for stomach problems. Scott?
Yes, I was just curious if you had anything to say on the relation between Kundalini energies and the state of Samadhi.
Well, the experience of Samadhi requires that the Kundalini has awakened somewhat. There is a type of Samadhi where you have the experience of oneness, but then you're back to business as usual, not as usual, but it's called Savikalpa Samadhi. And that requires the Kundalini to have awakened at least somewhat. For Nirvikalpa, the full self-realization, that requires Kundalini to fully awaken. Without, let me just say this. Since you asked, I'll say this, but more explanation on this will require a half an hour more. When that enormous energy of Kundalini rises up to this point, a very subtle opening opens up here. And then the energy can rise beyond to the 1,000-petaled lotus, to Sahasrara. So it's there that Samadhi experience happens. So that's kind of the relationship. But anything more will require a very long explanation.
Excellent.
Okay, let me see. We're a little bit over time. Let me just see if there are any major questions that I have. So I think I asked, desire, we talked about that. And we talked about Crystal's question about full alternate breath. Why 3.5? Like I said, I have no clue. And energization, we talked about it. What does it mean that we experience energy in one chakra rather than feel it move up and down? Vajra, that's fairly common. It's hard to say what it means, but often it's just it's related to it's related to the kind of habits and tendencies we bring into this life. For example, I myself tend to feel my root more often than not. And, you know, loyalty, the sense of stability, maybe that's what my karma needs me to work on. So it's really related at that level. And what Yogananda advised, Paramahansa Yogananda, who the most famous yogi to make his home in the West, and many of us are his disciples, what he advised was just refer it to the point between the eyebrows, and it'll resolve itself. The highest octave of every chakra is here. So regardless of which one we feel, it's neither good nor bad, we just transmute it to its highest octave. So Marga asked, how can this help with addictive behavior? It's a very involved question, and something that I don't feel that I'm very qualified to answer, Marga. So let me just stay off of it, other than to just note that there have been plenty of studies that have shown that meditation, the type that we practice today, and of course all meditation works with Kundalini, has been shown to be very, very effective in all kinds of addictive behaviors. So that's all I know to say about it. I don't know much more than that. Okay. Crystal, I see your hand up. Let me just go through the questions and see if there are questions from others that I haven't addressed, and I'll come back to you. Christopher says, do you mind speaking about the anahata sound, and what about the involuntary movements? I'll speak just a little bit about that. Anahata is the heart chakra. That's the Sanskrit name for it. Every chakra has associated with it a sound that one hears, not audibly, meaning you cannot trace it to anything outside. It's heard even when the tragus of the ear is closed. It's an inner vibration. And anahata refers to unstuck. That's what it means. Meaning it is the inner sound that we hear when we feel that momentary detachment to all things, meaning we are no longer stuck to outside things. That's why it's called anahata sound, that it is unstuck, and the heart is no longer stuck to outside tendencies. So that's the simple explanation of it. And I know your question also talks about involuntary movements, but that's probably better talked one-on-one. And anyway, we are running out of time. And let's see, what else is here? 3.5, is that related to golden mean Fibonacci sequence? No clue. I don't know. I mean, I've never thought about it as anywhere close to golden mean. So I don't really know. And Harsh asked, any specific practices you can recommend that can help wake up Kundalini apart from Raja Yoga? And the course, does it focus on Kundalini awakening? It doesn't focus on Kundalini awakening, but let me just say that we teach techniques of meditation that eventually lead you down the path of Kundalini awakening. We focus on essentially Raja Yoga. Every pranayama that I taught today will give explanation, astral anatomy, chakras, river of the spine, delusion, all of those things, along with hatha yoga poses. We kind of put it all in context. So any other specific practices other than Raja Yoga? Service, devotion, saying yes to life, kindness, saying yes to life. I'd say that's probably a big one. It doesn't get the due that it deserves, but just that attitude of saying yes to life is a really big deal. It doesn't get too much due because it's so darn hard to do. It's so much easier to go take the pill of a pranayama instead of saying yes to life. But I'd heartily recommend it. I work on it every day. It's not easy. Okay, Crystal, back to you. And I think this should be the last question, since I know we are very much out of time.
I just had a thought about the question about the addiction question, like yoga with using yogic practices for addiction. I guess this is a combination of I took the yoga 12-step yoga and the 12 steps class, which is offered at Ananda Palo Alto, which I think is either just started or is coming up soon online, by the way, in case that person, whoever they were, is interested. But you said how in Nadi Shodhana that when you're flowing the breath the opposite direction, that it's a cleansing. And then I just thought that, if you're cleansing your karma, and if your karma is habits, and if addictions are karmic habits, then would Nadi Shodhana be helpful for cleansing addiction by moving the energy, like you said, like a cleansing that way?
Could be. The reason I'm very reluctant to go there is I haven't heard any, I haven't come across those things in any of the ancient yoga books, nor has a master like Yogananda or others have made that specific connection. And sometimes with these, it's hard to say. It's superficially, it might feel like the connections might exist, but when you double click on it, it may not. So hard to say. But what we do know, along the lines of kind of working with your karma and habits, what is known to do exactly that is Kriya Yoga. The Kriya Yoga, which is ultimately, as a technique, it's a pranayama, but as a practice, it is much more than that. But that's what it does. Almost exactly the explanation that you gave, I'd say applies to Kriya Yoga, but I've never heard Nadi Shodhanam being described that way. So again, I plead ignorance. I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you all. It has been a pleasure to spend this time with you, and I hope you found it useful, and I'll hope to see you again in one of the other classes. I guess the onus is on me to end the session. So I'm going to click end now. You'll all be unceremoniously booted out, but know that I have nothing but love for all of you. Okay, bye.